Hello children, we're in this beautiful wooded area here in South Carolina, and we're mostly out here for birding, but I would not be surprised if we also come across some cool herps and insects, so let's see what all we could find out here.
This female summer tanager right here was making some calls, which are those little chirps you can hear in the background, but she was not the only one calling. She was actually communicating with this beautiful male. As you can see, the summer tanager is a very sexually dimorphic species, which means the males, at least as adults being very bright red, are very different from the females, which throughout their whole lives are yellow or orangish in color. Really cool for me seeing this communication behavior. Check out this lifer giant stag beetle that I just flipped under this log. Now, these guys are called stag beetles because the males have these huge jaws that look like deer antlers, but this right here is a female, so the jaws are not as large. I'm not going to let her bite me, but I'd imagine that those jaws, even with how small they are on the females, would still hurt because of how powerful they look. Now, the giant stag beetle is a distinctive species of stag beetle because of not only its reddish-brown coloration, but the entirely black legs. All other stag beetles in range would either be much darker in coloration or have orange legs. This is my lifer Afaria aestuans, which is eating another Afaria aestuans. So my first time ever seeing the species, and it's cannibalism. Afaria could be a tough genus to identify, and they are sexually dimorphic. Both of these are males, and you can see the patterning, both with the last three abdominal segments all being silvery white, the tibiae, or the bottom parts of each leg, being very dark red, the tarsi, or the feet, being black, and the mystax, or the bristles on the face, being relatively dark, makes this species, Afaria aestuans, being relatively easy to identify compared to some other members of this very tough genus. On the topic of very tough robberfly genera, this robberfly right here is a female of some species in the genus Machimus. Machimus itself is a pretty distinctive genus in terms of the overall dull brownish coloration and the body shape, but many of the species are indistinguishable without looking at male genitalia. Unfortunately, both individuals I saw, including this one female I caught, were females, so no good view of the genitalia. However, by using the leg color, I think this might be Machimus Nova Scotiae, but that's just a very big guess. I really can't be sure what species this is, and probably will never be able to be surely identify this individual to species level. This, though, is one of my favorite robberfly finds in a while. This was my lifer Andronosoma fulvicatum, a very rarely seen but very widespread robberfly. In fact, records of this species are scattered all across North America. This appears to be the first time anyone has found one in central South Carolina. This species is quite distinctive in appearance with the overall black and white body coloration except for that one bright red spot at the tip of the abdomen. These guys are pretty much endemic to pine forests, especially longleaf pine forests. They tend to prefer areas within those forests with sand on the bottom and tend to perch on fallen pieces of wood. This is pretty cool. Right next to each other on this little shrub right here, there's an eastern black carpenter ant, and then right on top of this absolutely beautiful ant is this really large leg-spanned harvestman that I can't really tell what species it is. That whole group is pretty hard to identify. Close to that eastern black carpenter ant were these ferruginous carpenter ants, which look a lot like the eastern black, but have a little bit of reddish coloration peeking in at its brightest in the thorax and on the legs. Overall, a quite distinctive looking ant. You might not be able to see this on first glance, but right in the middle of the frame, perched perfectly on the leaf, is this beautiful Carolina satyr. While the colors on this butterfly aren't necessarily striking, the patterns on it are when you look really close. The mix of the wavy lines on the wings and those eye spots lining the edges of the wings make this, as well as other similar satyrs, really beautiful butterflies. This on my arm right here is my lifer Carolina collared ant, which is just one of a pretty large colony that I flipped under a stack of wood. This genus, Aphanogaster, could be pretty tough to identify. The Carolina collared ant is the only species in range, with the body being an overall dark reddish color, but the legs being a paler kind of yellowish color. These ants were surprisingly large, and after looking at pictures beforehand of a Phaenogaster, I was not expecting them to be this large. Let's put this beautiful Carolina collared ant back with the rest of her colony.
Alright, this beautiful zebra swallowtail is landed right on the path. It's colored just like the gravel, but I'll see if I could walk a little closer to it, and you can see that black and white coloration. Beautiful. This is my first time ever seeing this species landed. It is perfectly landed. You can see why it's called the zebra swallowtail. Look at those beautiful black and white stripes on it. Now these guys are the only member of the kite swallowtail group that are found in North America. Now kite swallowtails can be found in other places around the world, but this is the only member of that subfamily that could be found here. This is so beautiful. Alright, I have no clue what all we're gonna find out here, but just look at this beautiful habitat. All this tall grass. I could hear a bunch of birds around. There's a summer tanager up there. Can't wait to see what we can find over here.
This is only my second time ever seeing this beautiful bird. This is the red-headed woodpecker, an extremely distinctive species. The adults have strikingly contrasting red heads and white wingtips comparing with that jet black coloration. Even though the lighting here is absolutely horrible, you can still at least make out the differences in coloration between each part of the body. A much more contrasting species than our other woodpeckers. This right here is my lifer Hemipenthes celeris, a tiny but very distinctive looking bee fly species. The wings are strikingly two-toned, with the top half being very darkly infuscated and the bottom being completely clear. The body is overall black, with little patches of white and gold hairs. This species sticks out from many of the other duller brown and mottled species in the genus Hemipenthes. A really beautiful bee fly.
Alright, so not as much going on over in that meadow spa as I thought there would be. That lifer Hemipenthes was very welcomed though. So we'll see what else we could find all around here. Alright, check this out, children. There's this beautiful looking vernal pool right behind me, and it looks like it usually gets a little bit more filled up with water than this, but since the water's all murky and stuff, there's no fish in here. I bet you will find some cool frogs.
And just like that, I'm not entirely sure yet what species of frog this is, but right here in this very muddy vernal pool is the little head sticking out of this frog. It looks to be a member of the genus Lithobates, or the American water frogs, which has some species like the leopard frog, pig frog, bullfrog, and much more. There's another frog way out in the distance at the other side of the pool, but yet again it's still way too far away to identify safely with this lens I have right here. Now many frogs, especially in the genus Lithobates, will take advantage of the lack of large fish or any fish living in these vernal pools, because vernal pools are temporary bodies of water. So frogs will take refuge in these, knowing that there's no large aquatic predators. Some species will even breed in these temporary pools of water that form in the middle of wooded areas. I was able to spot one right along the edge of this pool, and it's a perfect shot to identify these frogs safely as the green frog, which is a lifer for me. Now the green frog is very similar to the pig frogs that I'm used to in Southeast Florida, except green frogs have a distinctive ridge extending back from each eye on the back. Despite the name green frog, the farther south you go, the browner and less green they get. So these are barely green.